For years, Robert Kelly moved like he was untouchable. Now, he is pushing 60, and his life behind bars is completely pitiful. There is no stage, no spotlight, just a cold cell and the crushing weight of his actions. Let us break down how this R&B icon became just another nameless inmate. Remember, there was a time when the name Robert Sylvester Kelly could easily sell out massive arenas before a single note even played. He was, in the eyes of the music industry, modern soul royalty. He was so commercially unstoppable and creatively dominant that the media crowned him without hesitation. They simply expected the music world to bow. He was the mastermind behind 12 Play, R.N. Chocolate Factory, crafting anthems so powerful that people cried to them at weddings, funerals, and graduations. He moved tens of millions of albums, won countless Grammy Awards, and stood shoulder to shoulder with giants like Jay-Z and Lady Gaga. For decades, the industry treated him like a permanent fixture who could never be touched. Yet, here we are. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button. As Kelly approaches his 60th birthday, his crown is gone, the arenas are silent, and the former king of R&B now wakes up in a North Carolina prison cell, getting counted like livestock and eating food heat. Distrust, closely watched by federal guards who are not impressed by his past fame. Let us examine where his story physically plays out now. He is currently serving a massive federal sentence of about 31 years at a facility called Butner Medium, tucked away in the quiet countryside of North Carolina. The math of his punishment is simple but brutal. His projected release date is currently set for December 21st, 2045, with some files showing January 2046. That means if he actually survives to walk out into the fresh air, he will be nearly 79 years old, meaning his entire senior years will be consumed by the system. To see how stark this is, we must look at the exact breakdown of his charges. The 30-year foundation of his sentence comes from his New York trial. On top of that, his Chicago case added another 20 years, with 19 running concurrently and 1 running consecutively, bringing the total to 31 years. It is a punishment designed to outlive his relevance, his celebrity, and likely his own life. Now, his prison itself is a fascinating facility. Let us look closer at it, because we often imagine high-profile inmates in some dark Gothic dungeon, but the reality is actually much stranger and sadder. Butner Medium 1 is a medium security institution situated within a massive federal complex, which is a sprawling property, housing well over 1,000 prisoners. The Medium 1 building itself holds roughly 678 inmates, with hundreds more in a nearby camp. It features cell-style housing and control, movement, constant counts, and strict routines. If you are enjoying this deep dive, please like this video. It is this location that gives it a unique reputation. The complex sits beside a major medical center within the federal system, known for its cancer treatments, dialysis, and psychiatric care. Because of these specialized services and the wealthy white-collar inmates who have stayed there, the prison has earned a mocking reputation as a country club for the wealthy and famous. Some former prisoners have actually described the place in surprisingly positive terms, mentioning decent mattresses, access to gym equipment, green trees, clean surroundings, and reliable healthcare that is close at hand. Some former inmates call it relatively easy, pointing to recreation and low violence. Yet, for Robert Kelly, that comfortable image does not match his reality. While some paint Butner as a quiet place to age, our reporting shows a different story for this disgraced star, who faces new struggles every single month. We see constant legal filings and endless claims of suffering. The country club label means nothing to him, because his experience is about solitary confinement and isolation, not gym equipment and outdoor spaces. He reports medical scares and a constant fear that someone wants him gone. Let us walk through a typical day behind bars, the routine he is supposed to follow when things are calm. A normal day in a medium-security federal prison starts early, around 6 in the morning, with scheduled mess hall meals and daily work duties that all able-bodied inmates must perform. They perform the endless head counts that break up the hours, a brief escape outside, and then comes the dark reality of evening lockdown. Inmates cram into tiny cells with almost no programs or classes to occupy their empty hours. It is a highly controlled cycle of endless boredom, where the biggest highlight of the week is simply a restocked commissary. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe. But even those supplies are rarely guaranteed. Our editorial team found these prison complaints are far from glamorous. Meals are routinely called disgusting. The store shelves stay empty, while the decaying facility suffers from constant pipe leaks and sewage overflows. In one shocking report, the situation inside was detailed in brutal terms, with files describing filthy vents spitting out raw wastewater. This is the miserable and harsh backdrop for a fallen music mogul. The artist who once ruled the charts now shares foul, recycled air, with hundreds of inmates and broken pipes. But as commentators, we must note the unique danger Kelly faces, which white-collar criminals never experience. This prison holds numerous abusers, and as a famous, convicted predator, Kelly reportedly faces extreme hostility and danger. It is the kind of bullseye that follows a celebrity into the cafeteria and the yard. Sources claim he has tried to find meaning within this strict routine, reportedly taking part in a prisoner mentoring program. Maybe he wanted to prove he is more than his past crimes. But as we reveal next, that very attempt at rehabilitation was weaponized against him during an intense prison investigation, landing him right back in isolation. As journalists, we must look closely at these claims. We need to be transparent about where this dark, terrifying narrative is actually coming from. A vast amount of the scariest details come straight from his own legal team, meaning objective. Proof is impossible to find since the Prison Bureau refuses to discuss individual inmates. So, let us weigh both sides of the coin. The abuse could be very real, or perhaps exaggerated for public sympathy. Realistically, it is likely a mix of both. Government representatives, however, have routinely dismissed his allegations. Still, regardless of how bad his cell is, one truth remains fixed and needs to be emphasized before we proceed, because it defines this entire tragic saga. Make sure to like this video. He was convicted of racketeering, sex trafficking minors, and unspeakable abuses during major federal trials. Any pity for his current situation must be measured against those horrific acts. Our investigative team will lay out those details in the next segment of our report. For now, look at this 59-year-old, once an absolute icon, now just a serial number in federal custody. Waking up at 6 in the morning to meals he fears to eat, stuck in a facility people falsely call easy, tracking the endless march toward a release date. So far away, it sounds like a guarantee he will grow old and pass away behind bars. This is the grim reality of Kelly's daily existence. Spiders, a drug overdose, and a supposed murder plot. Recently, documents filed by R. Kelly's attorneys read less like standard bureaucratic complaints and more like a high-stakes Hollywood movie, filled with poisoned meals, hired hitmen, and a prisoner forced to sleep with insects crawling on him. Let us trace the timeline of these wild claims. Things took a dark turn in June 2025. That month, after his lawyers filed urgent claims of an active hit, the musician went into deep isolation, where the conditions were described as utterly horrific. Alone in a pitch-black cell, insects crawling on his skin, refusing to touch a single tray of food because he feared being poisoned. That vivid phrase, the spiders, became the defining image of this bizarre story. And it came straight from lawyer Beau Brindley. Addressing reporters outside the courthouse, the attorney painted a highly disturbing scene engineered to provoke public fury. Brindley stated bluntly that in his current sleeping bunk, he has insects swarming his body. He argued this was not safety isolation, but an aggressive punishment for daring to complain. According to the defense, Kelly fasted for several days because the only meals provided were prepared by other hostile prisoners, and a prison official had allegedly warned him to avoid eating them. Let us dissect the details of that claim for a moment, because it is genuinely disturbing whichever way you look at it. Either a famous superstar is being tortured in a dark cell, starving himself out of genuine, deep-seated fear, or a desperate artist and his lawyers are spinning an elaborate story to secure his freedom. The absolute truth, as always in this case, remains locked behind the heavy walls of the federal prison system. But those spiders were just the beginning. The main explosive allegation of the summer of 2025 was nothing less than a shocking conspiracy to end his life. In court motions filed that June, Kelly's defense team claimed federal prison officials plotted to have him murdered, allegedly recruiting inmates from the Aryan Brotherhood to silence him about serious, alleged government misconduct, including the theft of private legal letters. The motive, his lawyers claimed, was that he had become a threat, a man who knew too much about his conviction, and that the only way to bury his secrets was to bury him. His lead attorney did not hold back in a press conference following that intense hearing, declaring that these are people who would rather kill Kelly than allow the corrupt actions that fabricated his convictions to be exposed. It was an unbelievable accusation to throw at a federal agency in open court, prompting his lawyers to demand immediate home release on the basis that keeping him locked up amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. But the court was completely unmoved. A judge denied his requests, citing a lack of jurisdiction and zero evidence. Meanwhile, the broader network of prosecutors and prison bosses dismissed the entire story as pure theater and totally without merit. This alleged hit to the justice system was just a performance. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. Yet, woven into the center of this storm came a health crisis that even the most cynical critic cannot fully ignore, because it put the fallen star directly in a hospital bed. While held in solitary that June, Kelly allegedly received an overdose of his regular anxiety and sleeping pills from prison staff, which his lawyers claim led to him collapsing, passing out, getting dizzy with blurred vision, and finally spending 2 full days in a hospital at Duke University Hospital. The details got even more shocking from there. His defense claimed he developed blood clots, was dragged from the ward against medical advice, and according to court papers, that he was removed at gunpoint. That image, a nearly 60-year-old man being marched out at gunpoint while medical staff protested, is a detail that, if real, is absolutely terrifying. But here, the familiar system defense returns with full force. Federal prison officials insisted he simply received routine care, and judges dismissed every release petition tied to this drama. So once again, this story splits into 2 clashing narratives: a victim of intentional poisoning and a massive cover-up, or a routine health issue spun into something far more sinister than reality supports. It was against this wild backdrop of murder conspiracies, drug overdoses, that his team reached for the ultimate lifeline available to federal inmates: a presidential pardon. Kelly's attorneys announced they planned to petition President Donald Trump for a pardon, and his lawyer argued that, at this stage, Trump is the only leader with the courage to stand up to the establishment and demand justice. The argument, reportedly, was that Trump would empathize with a man who felt targeted by federal prosecutors, a strategy built entirely around fighting the so-called weaponization of the justice system. But the families of his victims strongly rejected this push. Their outrage was instant and intense. Advocates for his survivors fought the clemency bid, with one, the family insisting through their lawyer that the singer was fairly convicted and must serve every single day of his 31-year sentence. For them, this campaign was no crusade against corruption, but a final slap in the face, an abuser trying to run from the consequences his victims spent decades fighting to secure. Please subscribe for more hip-hop news. Just when the chaos seemed to settle, 2026 brought another shock, a final twist exposing the incredibly fragile state of his confinement. In February of 2026, Kelly was thrown back into solitary confinement after guards searched his cell and found, scribbled in a notebook, the number of a retired prison official, a former warden. The cell sweep was allegedly sparked by his cellmate's illegal phone, and finding that phone number, which his defense claims was linked to a prison mentorship program, was all it took to throw him back into the hole. He spent nearly 2 weeks isolated while investigators cleared him. His lawyer claimed no violations were found before he was sent back to general population in mid-March 2026. Think about the heavy irony in that. His mentorship program, the only positive thing he apparently tried to focus on, this desperate bid for redemption, became the exact reason he got thrown right back into darkness. A single phone number and a notepad cost him 2 weeks in solitary. That shows how fragile his daily life is. One random cell search or a slip of paper can completely wipe out any peace he has managed to rebuild. But as journalists, we must keep it real. These dramatic claims are not proven facts, so we must repeat that most of this narrative comes straight from Kelly's defense team. And prison officials have repeatedly dismissed their stories as pure fiction. Yet, whether the threats and the hits are reality or just high-stakes legal theater, the bigger picture remains unchanged. we see a man in a constant state of crisis, moving back and forth from solitary to the medical wing and through endless legal appeals that judges keep throwing out. No matter what is true, this is a chaotic path toward his 60th year of life. Make sure to hit subscribe for more news. Now, to truly understand why Kelly's current reality is a tragedy of his own making, you and I must look beyond those prison walls and trace the decades of dark allegations that finally brought him down. Because any sympathy his prison struggles might generate has to be measured against the horrific acts proven in court. And those crimes are deeply disturbing. Our coverage reveals that Kelly faced massive allegations of abuse stretching all the way back to the early 1990s, involving young girls, which eventually led to his major federal convictions in New York in 2021 and Chicago. For decades, he seemed completely untouchable, famously beating a state case in 2008 when a jury ruled his identity on that infamous tape was not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But what he got away with back in 2008 would catch up to him in the federal courts 15 years later. The dark pattern our team tracked throughout his trial was shocking. Subscribe now as we dissect a dark system, not just one predator, but a machine, according to prosecutors. Court evidence reveals how Kelly and his inner circle of managers, bodyguards, and assistants ran a criminal enterprise. They used his massive fame to recruit, groom, control, and exploit girls, often aged 13 to 17, and young women. As commentators, we find these systematic tactics absolutely chilling. False promises of career help, total isolation from families, strict rules governing their every move, plus physical and verbal abuse, secretly recording intimate acts, blackmail threats using those tapes, and exposure to disease without their consent, plus crossing state lines. Victims testified they were trapped in hotel rooms and homes, repeatedly abused, and forced into silence. The New York federal trial was the first major hammer to fall. On September 27, 2021, after 6 weeks, Kelly was convicted on all 9 counts, including a major racketeering charge built on 14 criminal acts, spanning roughly 25 years, alongside 8 counts of violating the Mann Act for transporting victims across state lines for illegal sexual activity, including minors. From our editorial standpoint, the sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming, featuring over 45 witnesses, including 10 victims, plus videos, texts, and DNA. Hit that like button as we expose the most notorious revelation: was bribing a government official to secure a fake because he allegedly believed she was pregnant. On June 29, 2022, federal judge Ann Donnelly handed down a 30-year sentence in prison. Then, the Chicago Federal Court delivered another devastating blow. On September 14, 2022, after an intense trial, R. Kelly was found guilty on 6 of 13 federal charges. This included 3 counts of producing horrific, exploitative materials, and 3 counts of enticing minors for illegal activity. The sickening conduct involved a young girl who was identified as his goddaughter when she was only 14. Prosecutors presented damning video evidence and victim testimony. Though acquitted on several charges, including obstruction of justice tied back to his infamous 2008 trial, and his co-defendants cleared entirely, the court still handed him a 20-year sentence on February 23, 2023. 19 of those years will run concurrently with his New York prison term, leaving us with a staggering, effective 31-year total. These hard facts form the backdrop of bizarre tales, like prison spiders and alleged murder plot. It is clear that Kelly has never accepted his fate, continuing to claim his total innocence. He blames prosecutorial overreach, but the appellate courts have systematically crushed his appeals. His 30-year New York sentence was upheld in February 2025. By June, the Supreme Court refused to hear his case, while his Chicago conviction was also upheld. Every legal door has slammed shut, leaving us to analyze the harsh math of his remaining years. There is virtually no path left. Now, you might think he could get paroled for good behavior, but the federal prison system does not operate like that. If you are finding this breakdown helpful, please subscribe. Under the 1984 Sentencing Reform Act, traditional federal parole was completely abolished, meaning Kelly has no set release date unless he secures a massive sentence reduction or compassionate release. He would need a presidential pardon or a miraculous overturned conviction. We saw his team try to argue for compassionate release, pointing to his medical issues, blood clots, and jailhouse threats. But those efforts failed in 2025. The First Step Act demands extraordinary circumstances, and the courts decided his situation simply did not qualify. From our view, the reality is stark. Legal analysts agree that his chances of walking free early are almost non-existent at this point. Let us look at the best-case scenario together and imagine what his future looks like. Let us assume he survives his sentence and walks out around 2045. What would actually be waiting for him? The answer is practically nothing. We must look at what has already happened to his empire. Following his conviction, his mainstream music career was wiped out, and his record label dropped him. Major artists distanced themselves, with Lady Gaga removing their collaborative track. Streaming platforms kept his music, but all promotion stopped. Still, a loyal fan base generates passive streams, and royalties slowly trickle in, though his legal and financial debts keep those funds heavily restricted. There are no major releases. The massive industry machine that once crowned him king is gone. It did not just pause, it completely fell apart. Yet, there is a fascinating twist to this story. Kelly stubbornly refuses to stop creating. From inside his cell, he insists his music remains alive. During a 2025 call to the Inmate to Tea with AMP podcast, he claimed that he has written 25 albums worth of music behind bars. When asked about his creativity, he offered a chilling description, calling his intense drive to sing and write music an incurable disease. He insists he is constantly writing, no matter what. Before we continue, hit that like button. Fans occasionally leak short audio snippets, and unofficial bootlegs briefly appear on various social media platforms. But our industry sources agree that this unreleased music is ultimately heading straight into a void. Any potential comeback for the singer is seen by professionals as highly unlikely and practically impossible. By the time he walks free, he will be in his late 70s, facing a completely different industry. The younger generation of listeners will only know him for his crimes and severe prison sentences. The severe stigma of his convictions makes major record deals, radio play, and mainstream collaborations completely impossible. Only a tiny loyal group of supporters might stream his music. But the rest of the world has moved on, and his relevance will continue to fade, just like other disgraced musicians before him. This represents the ultimate tragedy of his story. As he approaches his 60s, we see two distinct sides. On one side, there is the human face, an aging man suffering in a cell, battling severe medical issues. He spends his days cycling through medical units, complaining of terrible, highly challenging living conditions. He continues writing unheard albums and pleading for a presidential pardon that his victims' families will fight. But then, we must look at the moral face of this case. This is not a tragic accident. This outcome is the direct result of a quarter-century of systematic abuse, confirmed by multiple federal juries. After hearing from dozens of witnesses, they proved he ran a highly coordinated network of exploitation. His musical empire is ruined, his legal options are completely exhausted, and his actual release date remains deep in the future. He may never see freedom again, and he remains stuck in his cell. Now, he spends days claiming innocence and nights allegedly fighting off pests and hunger behind bars. Yet, he is writing music for a comeback that the public has decisively rejected. If you find this breakdown intriguing, please hit that like button. This is R. Kelly today, approaching 60, a fallen king singing into a dark cell for an audience that has completely, permanently tuned him out. Make sure to subscribe for more rap news. We appreciate your incredible support. Click on one of the boxes on your screen right now for our next story.